Thanks a lot for the welcome. Yes, today I will talk about migration strategies or how to get rid of a deprecated framework. I work for Camp2Camp. We are based in Germany, France and Switzerland. We are specialized in open source software development and help our customers implement sustainable solutions. We have 3 active areas we are working in, which is ERP software development based on Udo, IT infrastructure management, as well as GIS, which is why I'm here today. So yes, I'm a front-end developer at Camp2Camp in the geospatial department, mainly working on the 2 projects, GeoNetwork UI and the geoportal of Luxembourg, which will both be topic of today's talk as well. So today I want to talk about a problem that many of you might be already familiar with, the deprecation of a framework within your website or within your software. I want to give a common example for this, talk about reasons why to migrate, point out some approaches to do so, and most of it talk about the lessons we've learned within the 2 projects of the geoportal of Luxembourg as well as GeoNetwork UI. So, who here knows a popular website or software where you know it uses a deprecated framework? Okay, so it might be, I hope, a topic of interest, I guess. Today I want to talk about AngularJS. AngularJS was very widely used in the last decade. However, in 2022, it ran out of live support. Being still very present in the internet on many websites, which was not different for a couple of Phosphor-G products. But why should we migrate? Why should we just not keep on going with the legacy we have? I think one central reason is the maintainability, which will become very hard in the future. At the same time, we as a developer become much less efficient. So this causes us many headaches, these 2 points. But last but not least, there is also the problem of security issues, which might arise a certain fear at other stakeholders like the client. So what possibilities do we have to get rid of the deprecated code we have in our software? I think there are 3 quite obvious options. The first one, to rewrite all at once. The second one, to do things step by step. And the third one is to a little different approach to develop a new product. Today I don't want to talk about the first option, because in the 2 projects I'm working on, it was not really an option, because it's just too extensive to choose this way. So today I want to talk about progressive migration on the example of the geoportal of Luxembourg, as well as the development of a new product on GeoNetwork UI example. So let's have a look first at the progressive migration. The context is the geoportal of Luxembourg. It's a very extensive geoportal. There are a lot of topics, a lot of layers. There's 3D, there is street view, there is routing, so a lot of functionality to migrate in the end. It's based on GeoMapFish, but it's highly customized on the front end. And it has a complex and growing Docker composition, which has become more complicated due to its history. So in recent history, it was not really fun to work on it. The requirements from the customer were, on the one hand, ISO functionality to have the same things afterwards than before, but at the same time to consider constant evolution on the master branch and not do a migration on the side during 2 or 3 years and then switch to the new development after this. So this is why we chose the progressive migration here. Now I want to talk a little about the last year, split into 3 phases more or less. The first phase was that we migrated parts of the existing components within web components without really touching a lot the existing app state of the AngularJS application, without touching too much the CSS part. Lessons we have learned from this was that it was possible to go like this, but in the end limited, and we felt it more and more essential to have a new state, and we were not really satisfying with the things we had to do in the code to make things work. And in the end we hadn't really gotten rid of our existing development environment and didn't really feel efficient. So we sat back and reflected on how we could get more efficient on the developing as a developer. And we came up in what I call the second phase, and what I call the web component machinery, which is nothing else than a separate repository to create the new components, like a new application, with the idea to later integrate them piece by piece into the legacy application. At the same time, we started to develop a new core based on RxJS, and we integrated Tailwind CSS into this new application. Lessons learned here: things started to become fun again. We started to feel more efficient again. We had a feeling that Lit and RxJS worked well together, even though they are not that often used together when you look at examples in the internet and so on. And it's a little verbose maybe. This brought us to the third phase, where we did more or less a migration within the migration. We switched from Lit and RxJS to Vue and Pinia. This was on the one hand due to the fact that the customer had more know-how in-house on Vue than on Lit. And on the other hand also that because we realized with this new application from scratch, we were really free to choose what we wanted as technologies. And we went on this track. At the same time, we developed a new state persister that takes care of synchronizing the new app state with the URL and the local storage of the navigator. And lessons learned here was that was just becoming more and more fun to work on the project. The migration from Lit to Vue was pretty quick. We really appreciate the out-of-the-box reactivity within Vue with Pinia together. There's a good testing given by Vittest. However, we also noticed that the code we are writing now might be a little more specific to the framework than the code we had with Lit before. After these 3 phases, we are now in what I call the integration phase. This is where we build the components that we have within the new application from scratch as web components within a library together with a new core. And then we set up a rather rustic integration environment to be able to turn some screws in the legacy code and on the new code at the same time. And the last step is finally to make these new components work in the legacy code. Lessons learned here, I think we can say that the new core really facilitates the integration now. It assures us that the new components work well together, and at the same time it works in parallel to the existing what was called the permalink manager, which handles the URL in the legacy code. Then go with the new, glue the legacy. I said this because at various points we had to make the decision, do we already take everything new we developed, like the part of the core or the new map, or should we try to plug in the new components we've developed, for example, to the old map. But in the end we decided to go for the new parts. This on the one hand prevents us to throw away the glue we have to write. We would have had to write for the old parts. And on the other hand, it was not that complicated in the end. Like for the map, it was just sufficient to pass the open layers map to the old tools, and they work most of them almost like this. Regarding technical limitations, within Vue, you can create custom elements or web components, but there is no out-of-the-box option to ignore the shadow DOM. So we had to do a little workaround for this. Ignoring the shadow DOM is important when you use a lot of web components in the same application, but you want to use the global CSS of the application. And in the part where we now integrate the new components in the legacy application, we still have to do some tweaks on CSS, sometimes on the new developments and sometimes on the old, because there are just influences from parts that we don't have in the new environment. So this is the current state of our migration. What you see in green here on the left side, the side panel, which includes the layer manager and the layer tree, as well as the map with some tools on the upper left side, is all new code based on the new core and with new components. And what is red is still legacy code, like the header and the footer with most of the tools of the geoportal, and some map tools on the bottom right. But most of them work together with the new code, so many of them are functional. There are, of course, a lot of things that don't work yet. We still have a lot of work to do, but they work together. So much to the progressive migration. Now I want to come to a totally different idea, which is to develop a new product. This I want to talk about on the GeoNetwork UI project. The idea of GeoNetwork UI came up in the context of GeoNetwork, which might be familiar to a lot of you. A very extensive catalog application with a very powerful backend. Also a complex front end, which also has AngularJS included. Here it was clear that the rewrite would be too extensive also. So the idea came up to develop a new UI complementing the existing one and maybe replace it one day. The architecture of GeoNetwork UI is a monorepo architecture. So we have libraries split up into UI and feature parts that allow a use case driven development of different applications based on these libraries. So we have a lot of applications within the same repository. This is a rather code-oriented customization. The technological stack of GeoNetwork UI is NX for the monorepo, Angular with RxJS, Tailwind CSS, OpenLayers, Storybook. I forgot the testing is Jest, and right now we are working on doing end-to-end tests with Cypress as well. Right now we have different applications in GeoNetwork UI. The first one that came out of GeoNetwork UI is the data feeder, which is a very simple interface that allows data publication. It's like a wizard that goes through different steps, allowing the user to upload a data set that is then published in GeoServer, and the metadata or provided by GeoServer, and the metadata is published in GeoNetwork. The second application is the Data Hub. It's a search interface with the goal to stay rather simple as well, which you see on the right side here. With a search bar, there is like a timeline, a little bit reminding timelines of social networks. Then the third application is still in the conception phase. It's a data platform that will be more extensive than the current Data Hub. There is a simple map viewer which exists, but which is not really used yet. But it will allow to visualize cartographic data. Then there is the editor, which is about to take off in development. I think there is a talk tomorrow afternoon about it by my colleague Olivia and Florent. And last but not least, there are the web components that allow to integrate any of this functionality based on the same code within other applications, like here in the middle, where it's very small, but you see like the result list of a search within MViewer, which is a completely different WebJS. Or on the right side, it's the search bar integrated in GeoOrchestra, which is a complete IDE solution. Lessons learned in GeoNetwork UI, I think we can now identify certain strengths of the project. I think it's a well-tested software. The reactivity within GeoNetwork UI works really well. There is a clear separation of concerns between the UI and the feature libraries, which allows for a good reusability in the different applications, but also in the web components. And all this together has given us a certain flexibility, in particular to focus, for example, in this project, more on open data and the user. Challenges, I would say, one is that the architectural demands might be a certain barrier for people to get started. The same code in different applications is also a challenge, in my opinion, because when you develop on one, you have to take care that you don't break the other one. And stability has its price, so writing tests simply takes time. Regarding the user interface, I think we made the experience that it's really worth to hire an expert. The data hub was completely accompanied by a UX designer, and we are really happy with the result of this, because it's just things us developers, we wouldn't come up with the ideas where we just think, okay, we put a button there, but in the end it's maybe more complex than that. And last but not least, I think creating a community is also not an easy task. It has taken quite some time that the topic has generated interest. It takes a lot of work. Mainly, I think Flo and Olivia are very invested in this topic. Yeah, to get a certain interest for the project. But now it's finally really taking off. We have the feeling there are more and more demands coming for it. Just to conclude quickly on the two approaches regarding our projects, this is not something that should always be like this. But I think progressive migration is feasible, but you should be aware that it's, in the end, it will be more work, I think, so there is a certain risk of a higher cost for it. If you have a complex development environment, it's really worth to get rid of it, or as much as you can, and set up something new to be more efficient. And regarding the development of a new product, I think it bears many opportunities. Like in GeoNetwork UI, we went into the open data direction. It also allows rather flexible financing, because you can start with something small, with a small application, and keep on going from there. However, I think there is a certain risk of non-acceptance, that it takes time for a new project to be accepted or to be adapted by others. Thanks a lot for your attention. I hope it was somehow interesting, and I'm here for questions.